Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video. Today we talk about ultralight fishing tackle. This is kind of different from the ultralight tackle that you see in the States. Of the few that I have, I picked out these two. One mid-end and one top-end reel. Okay, so both are 1000 sized reels, but this particular one is actually kind of big to be a 1000 size. So this is a little bit on the bigger side. Whereas this is actually on the smaller side of the 1000 sized scale. I use both for different purposes. When I go fishing, I have at least both of these with me. And they have different roles. So one would be for soft plastics, which is this one. And it has a very slow retrieve speed. It's a PG. Whereas this one, it is a higher speed reel. You have to think about what you want to accomplish with them first before actually going into this whole thing. So like, take for example, if you want to fish small plugs, okay, small lures, it would be better if you actually chose a higher speed reel because you want to be able to cast out as far as you could, reel in, and then work the lures fast. Whereas when you're using soft plastics, you want a slower reel, especially if you're imitating shrimp or worms. Take for example, these things don't swim real fast. And you tend to miss a lot of bites, especially those fish that are in highly pressured areas. If you're fishing, let's say, soft plastics that have a swimming tail, such as this one, okay, right here. Now let me zoom in for you, and well, actually, let me just focus for you right here. Okay, so something this small that has a paddle tail require reels that have a higher speed ratio. Okay, so with smaller plugs, so you need a faster reel to actually make them work. Now, if you have tiny soft plastics and also spoons, okay, so I'm gonna show you a spoon here that I use a lot for this type of fishing. And the power gear or a slow retrieve reel is actually better because what happens is they don't make the spoon spin. Instead, they just make them wobble. So as you can see here, quite a tiny one. And if you actually use this with a fast retrieve reel, what happens is that they tend to spin, and you don't want them to spin. So in that instance, you want a slow speed reel, which is exactly what we have here. Okay. Now for the rods, this is kind of different from what you would find. And I'll show you the specs because I had a hard time looking for this. Okay. Now, if you look at the specs, this rod is actually quite long. It's the longest that I found. It's 8.6. And it can cast lures from 0.8 grams to 8 grams. And it is rated for PE3 2.6. Now, unfortunately, this rod is not available anymore. It's discontinued. And this is the only one that I have, but I love it. This is actually my main rod. Now, that's not the brand. It's actually the model. Okay. And for guys in the States, I'm pretty sure you'd be shocked because you would know Varivas as a fishing line company, but this is one of their rods. Okay. So paired up with this, it's a very, very good, it becomes a very, very good system. Very easy to fish and very, very sensitive, which is very important when you're fishing with really light. And I fish with 1 gram jig heads and soft plastics on them, and they work really, really well. Now, when I am fishing plugs and soft plastics for swimming, this is what I use. It's a bit shorter at 7'3". Okay, so let's focus here. You can tell by the drawing there that, or the decal, it's actually made for a type of trevally, and this is quite popular. This type of fish is quite popular in Asia, specifically in Malaysia and Singapore. This is a slightly longer rod, and it is also rated for a bit higher test line. So this is 0.4 to PE1. Generally, I use heavier lures on this. So, well, not exactly heavy, but up to about 5-7 grams. And together with this, it forms a really nice light combo that I could use for the whole day or a really long session without getting tired, even if I'm casting a lot. Okay, now, one of the most important things, if not the key to ultralight fishing, is, of course, the fishing line. I have to say, braids that are really thin are very, very difficult to come by. And I use suffix on this one, and it's a bit thicker. Okay, so sometimes I switch between reels for this rod right here. Okay, and then there's also another rod that I use with this. But you can switch things around, but you have to be very critical when you're choosing your fishing line. This, I use the thinnest line I could find. And if you're seeing what I'm holding here, okay, now let me zoom in so that you'd have a very good idea. Or let me just take this close. You could hardly see it, right? Okay, that's my leader. That's not my line. This is 2.75 pound mono. And I use this as my leader. But my line, the thinnest that I've found, is actually from Momoy. It's called Oshikage. And it's the thinnest fishing line or fishing braid that I've ever found. So this is the one. You could hardly see it, but that's the line I use. It's very critical to have as thin a line as possible for this type of ultralight fishing, because you want casting distance and you're working your lures. Obviously, you're working your lures in a bigger area. And if you could see also, the rods that I'm using are kind of different from what everybody else uses because they're long. So I'm fishing from shore, and I make sure that I have farthest distances for casting. And this is why it took me a while to actually find the right rods. There are some rods that are quite long out there that are also labeled ultralight. A bit difficult to actually import them because of the length, but I got lucky with these two actually because I was able to buy them locally. But if you want to get into this type of fishing, I suggest that you actually look at if you want to invest on something like this, invest on at least reels that are on the Stradic level, because this type of fishing requires your reel to be very dependable, and that's your biggest investment. Now, for the rod, it's very difficult to find the long ones, especially if you're a shore fisherman. But look around. Japan has quite a few of them. Or you could talk to your local tackle shop and see if they can actually source you one. It's a very exciting type of fishing because when you are fishing in, let's say, urban environments where the fishing pressure is actually quite high, this sort of tackle will get you a lot of strikes. It's not necessarily for small fish because I've actually caught quite big fish with these things. I have a video on Instagram actually of me fighting a fish for 23 minutes on a Stradic CI4, this rod right here, and this leader. 23 minutes before the leader actually busted. Which brings me to why I love this type of fishing so much. Now, the biggest reason for me to actually get into ultralight and love it is because it teaches you a lot of things. Now, with ultralight, especially when you're targeting bigger fish or decent fish, actually teaches you a lot about your line management, your knots, your drag management, your angles for fighting the fish. Those are very important. It is actually key to catching big fish or decent fish in these types of outfits, because everything has to be perfect, and it forces you to actually have your lines management, your knots, fish fighting skills, and all that. It's basically a shortcut to make you a better fisherman. So it just makes sense to actually have at least one of these things. Now, here in the UAE, in the summer before, it was dead. And then I started ultralight fishing, and my friends started ultralight fishing. And then we encouraged a friend who owns a tackle shop to actually stock ultralight stuff. And that's when it started. You know, people started picking it up, and they found that, hey, you know, this sort of thing works. And a friend of mine, Kelvin, was really active in this, and he actually encouraged a few people until finally it grew to what it is now. So in the summer, it's actually very good fishing, even when the fishing is a bit more difficult than it is in the summer, or in the winter, just because of ultralight. So ultralight fishing, especially here in the Middle East, we do ultralight fishing in salt water, not fresh water. So the rods are a bit different from what you would find in America. The actions on the rods are actually closer to like the heavier stuff. They're fast rods instead of the noodly parabolic rods that you find in the States. Systems are different. Now the reels are tiny, the spools are shallow, and it's to accommodate the braid, of course. And then you just put in a 200-meter shot and it's full, like this one right here. Whereas in the States, of course, some of the reels have quite deep spools, so kind of difficult. Now, I'm pretty sure Shimano has the Stradic there, and it could be that they standardized. I don't know. I bought this one here, so and the stock is JDM, so I'm not too sure if in the US you can get the same model reel, but definitely if you buy a Stradic there, you could always buy a spool from Japan, which would be cheaper, and you'd have a shallow spool. Other reels actually have both a shallow and a deep spool, so great. Now, it's not only the 1000 that you could use for ultralight. You could also use a 2000, and it has a distinct advantage of actually giving you a bit more casting distance because of the size of the spool. So when you cast, the line spirals out. On a 1000, the spirals are actually small, whereas with the 2000, the spirals are a bit bigger. Some people actually use 2500 size reels, which is also fine, just as long as it balances with your rod. And the potential for distance on 2500 reels are obviously a bit more. It's a bit better actually than the 1000 size reel. So it's your choice and whatever's available in your country. Again, long rods give you an advantage. There are some rods that are designed for, like this particular one, it's designed for small weights, but it's long. So when you cast out, you get better casting distance, and you cover more water. So that's it. I hope you learned something on this one. I'm going to keep it as short as I can. Hopefully after editing this, it'll be even shorter. So if you want to get into this, I really encourage you to, because it teaches you to be a better fisherman just because you're undergunned and you have no choice, really. But to perfect everything from your fish fighting skills, your drag management most especially, you learn how to manage bigger fish when you're fighting ultralight. And of course, the enjoyment of just fishing these, it's just amazing because they're a very good system, and it's just downright fun. All right, so that's it for now. I hope you learned something. If I missed something, or if you have questions, drop your questions in the comments below. I always answer questions and comments. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Oh, if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Alrighty. So again, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Class dismissed.